Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about review comments. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how do you deal with a teammate who isn't receptive to your review comments? I usually, it depends a little bit on the role that I have. If I'm just working as another software developer in the team, I ignore the fact that they ignore me. I usually just give them suggestions and then I let them do their thing because I'm not really in a position of authority at that point. And if it's something that bothers me a lot, I usually raise it with my manager and I say that, uh, well, I make them aware of it, and if they want to take action on it or they suggest that I do something about it, I might do something about it. Otherwise, I'll just leave it there. It's because the flow that I usually use, guys, is that. Let me put it to you like this. I'm not sure if you've watched any of those videos, but I have this. I have a persona that I use in depending on circumstances. Nowadays, or in recent time, it has been more often than not, and I call this persona Happy Donkey. Now, it's just derived from the Shrek movies. Donkey in that movie is one of the characters, or in these movies is one of the characters. And this is an individual who is, he's slightly supposed to be slightly less witty than, like, he's a little bit clueless about some things, and he's always happy. The reason why I have that as a persona is because that is a state that is digestible and non-hostile to basically anybody that I interact with. The reason why I want to have that is because the issue is that when you let things get to you and you become emotionally invested in things, you start breathing resentment and anger within yourself, but you also project that out towards other people. And the problem is that if you get into this habit where, say, someone is ignoring you, or like something is bothering you to the point where you actually complain about it or you let it fester a little bit, the thing that will happen is that you will put your manager or your whoever, right, in a situation where they don't really know who to believe, which is difficult for you. It's similar to when I was teaching martial arts. I told people that one of the first things, if you're ever in a confrontation with somebody, is for you to put yourself in a position where you either contacted the police or like made notice of the event or so forth. Due to the fact that perception is very important once a third party enters as an observer, because even if you know that you did nothing wrong, the police does not. They have to evaluate because they weren't there. Just as my manager, if my coworkers complain about me or feel like something's not really working, they only have the one thing, which is, this is why I tell people all the time, there's a difference between the laws and what's right and proper according to law and what's right and proper within a working environment, right? Because you don't really have, like, all it takes for a situation to go in a very different direction from what you might expect is that the wrong person is your manager, or the wrong person like the person that you have a confrontation with might be an individual who really is liked or something like that, popularity contest and things like that. And so when I give my teammates a comment, in order for me to mitigate the fact that some of them might not be open to change, it's very simple. I simply have this persona as a default, and I basically build this up. It's not that difficult to maintain. Sometimes it's hard for me to, like, when I get truly resentful or like I get upset with someone. But the reason why I do that is so that I can do the thing that I do in the code review, which is that I put a comment on things and I don't approve it until it is fixed, or until my coworker musters up the balls to tell me that I don't think that this is important until they can have a conversation with me. And what now happens is that due to the fact that they need me to approve the comment, they actually have to have a conversation with me, even because I work with quite a few developers, guys who are like accustomed to that you just approve and that's it. And I don't want to do that. I want them to justify the reason why they're doing it, and that forces them into this conversation. This is where Happy Donkey makes itself that persona makes itself very useful here, because basically what happens is that if they get upset with me, it's mostly due to that they think that I'm incompetent or being annoying or something like that, or I don't really get it because I'm too stupid or too idealistic or something like that. But they don't get the sensation that I'm trying to be mean to them or I'm trying to attack them. Just as the coworkers and my boss and my managers and so forth, they are basically they look at this persona as this person who's just not really getting it. And that is a better state than for me to be in strategically than it is for me to be in the state where I know everything, or I think I know everything, and that I just put people down because I have too high expectations of them. I hope that makes sense to you. That it's a difference in perception, because you can say the same thing in many different ways. You can smile and do something unpleasant, and that is going to be better if you want to sort of control the narrative, or like sort of control what the narrative will be if there's a confrontation about it, than it is if you are known throughout the office of being this person who just has a lot of complaints or so forth related to code reviewers or like these sorts of issues, right? It's more of a benign personality, which gives you a measurement, some measure of protection against what happens next, which is that the teammate is going to have a discussion with you, and if they go to that point where they say, I don't think that this is super important, then you can still play Happy Donkey. Like a classic one that I usually do is that I say, for example, let's say that they didn't write any unit tests. And I say, I think you should write unit tests. And they say, well, and I go, and then they try to muscle me into approving, or like saying that we should be doing this or that, or so forth and so forth. And then I say, I'm sorry, I don't really get it. I thought that we were supposed to write unit tests. Am I wrong about that? And I know that I'm not wrong, but I also know that they know and assume that they can skip it because they know that they're not going to get their work checked by someone who cares. They're not accustomed to it. This is the reason why most people in front-end, for example, don't learn how to write unit tests, because they don't actually have to keep the job. And so what then happens is that but I'll have to double check it, and then I pull in somebody else. I pull in the other developers, and I asked them, and I said, and if that's uncertain, because I know that this is a norm, it's something that they do, even though they're not supposed to be doing it. And all it has to happen is that I escalate it all the way up. I use this uncertainty, this unspoken rule that they can't really motivate, because it's basically laziness or so forth, in many cases, to my advantage, because I pretend to be stupid, or I pretend to like not really understand, and I get it all the way up to the managers. And all of a sudden it becomes a hassle for them to ignore what I'm saying. That's not always possible, but it is a very good strategy for you to get people to actually listen to what you're saying in your comments, because you're forcing them into a conversation every single time, and most people are very annoyed by that fact. And so you should use this sparingly, because if you do it too much, you might get complaints. I've had this happen to me as well. This is why Happy Donkey becomes very powerful, because when you get these complaints, you can still play stupid with your manager and just say, but okay, I'm very sorry. I thought that you wanted us to make sure that there were tests or something like that, if you have a good point, if that makes sense, right? And all of a sudden, your manager now has to justify the fact that they don't actually really know what's going on. They can't attack you. They can't put you on the spot because you're just doing a good job. And your coworker seems to be upset over the fact that they came and complained over the fact that you're doing a good job. So how are they going to deal with that situation? It becomes very difficult for anybody to do something about it. It becomes a bigger conversation. This takes a lot of energy sometimes, guys, so I don't recommend doing it all the time, but it is something that you should consider. And if they do actually have a point, it's important for you to also understand that you don't always You're not always correct about your comments, but at the very least you want them to go through this process with you, because when that happens, it forces the entire organization, everybody's involved, to agree on what should be happening in the reviews, what should be addressed, etc., etc. And when you get to that state, it's very likely that if you really have a point, that you're going to get your way. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way I deal with teammates who don't respond or are receptive for my review comments is that I apply they have to get my approval usually. And if they use somebody else or they ignore me or so forth, I just basically raise it with the manager and say, I think that this is a concern, etc., etc. If there's no traction, guys, it's the same thing I've told you before about everything code related. If nobody wants you to do this refactor or change, or to your ideas are not being heard, it is not really a good idea for you to try to force it, unless, as I said, you have a very efficient way of doing that. Even Happy Donkey doesn't work all the time on some people, so you just sort of have to ignore them. But it is a very powerful strategy for you to approach the problems this way, because, as I said, you don't have to get angry with people for not doing a good job, but you can use their if you just identify the thing that allows them to get away with it, and if you play this role well, you will find that even if would be more satisfying to just put them in their spot or get angry or so forth, you will still get your way. It's just a safer way for you to arrive there, because what you don't want is to get into a confrontation and cause these sorts of real issues with people, which is very common, guys. Some people have this and as a strategy, and you very quickly realize that the only thing that keeps you employed, if you are that sort of person, is how much does your manager side with you. Because that is what it comes down to. If two people in a team has a confrontation, the manager will step in at some point. But the problem is that they don't actually know what's going on. So what are they going to do? Well, this is not a court of law. They're not going to sit there and wait for evidence. They're going to go based on what they think is right. And if they like the other person more than you, or you have a history of causing issues and so forth, you might find out that doing what's right for the company comes back and bites you in the ass. Have a great day.